Have you ever heard of submechanophobia? It's fear of man-made objects underwater. I probably have the opposite since I'm pretty much obsessed with shipwrecks. Especially one wreck in particular, but we'll dive into that in a couple of episodes. Welcome to Sidequests. I learned about this, and now I've decided to make it your problem. There's steel at the bottom of the ocean that can be more valuable to a scientist than gold. It's not rare or fancy. It's valuable because it's quiet. In a world humming with radiation from decades of nuclear testing, this metal doesn't hum at all. It is silent, and that makes it priceless. This is the story of how an entire fleet of German warships, deliberately sunk after World War I, accidentally became one of the most important resources for 20th century science, helping build everything from spacecraft to cancer treatment machines. And it all starts in a lonely harbor in the north of Scotland in the summer of 1919. The First World War is technically over, but not quite finished. The peace treaty, the Treaty of Versailles, is still being finalized, and in the meantime, nearly 75 ships of the once mighty German high seas fleet sit quietly in Scapa Flow, a sheltered natural harbor in the Orkney Islands of northern Scotland. They're in limbo, crewed by skeleton teams of German sailors under British guard, waiting for the official word on their fate. The man in charge of those sailors, Rear Admiral Ludwig von Reuter, doesn't trust the peace process. He's convinced the Allies will divide the ships among themselves, an act he decides cannot be allowed. So without permission from anyone, he gives a secret order. At 11:20 a.m. on June 21st, his crews begin opening seacocks, smashing valves, and setting time charges. The British are caught completely off guard, scrambling to stop the sabotage. But it's too late. Within a matter of hours, 52 ships, battleships, cruisers, destroyers, begin slipping beneath the water. Some sink straight down. Others roll, groan, and vanish in slow motion, like steel giants resigning themselves to fate. Naturally, the British are furious. 9 German sailors were shot, and the British managed to beach a handful of ships before they went under, but the damage was done. What had been one of the most powerful naval forces in the world was now a ghost fleet resting silently at the bottom of the sea. What no one realized yet is that these wrecks would become far more useful in death than they ever were in life. Fast forward a few decades. The world has changed a lot. By the late 1940s and early 1950s, a new kind of science is taking off. Nuclear physics, atomic research, and space exploration. And with it comes a new problem, radiation. Starting in 1945, the world entered the atomic age with a bang. Atmospheric nuclear testing filled the skies with radioactive particles that settled into everything, including freshly made steel. This is critical because when scientists build ultra-sensitive instruments like Geiger counters, space telescopes, or cancer radiation machines, they need to eliminate as much background radiation as possible. But modern steel forged after 1945 is just a little bit hot. Even small levels of fallout interference can ruin delicate experiments. The solution? Pre-atomic age steel. Metal forged before the world went radioactive. And where could you find massive amounts of pre-1945 steel protected from modern contamination? At the bottom of Scapa Flow, those sunken German warships, scuttled in 1919 long before the first atomic bomb, were perfect. Even better, they'd been resting under seawater, which shielded them from most environmental radiation. When scientists and defense contractors realized this, salvaging began. Not for scrap metal, but for a very specific resource, low background steel. Chunks of these ships were pulled from the depths and repurposed for scientific instruments. This steel was reportedly used in early spacecraft like the Pioneer and Voyager probes, nuclear physics labs, and deep space observatories, anywhere precision measurements required absolute stillness from the tools themselves. Think about it. When you're trying to detect a neutrino or measure cosmic rays from billions of light years away, the last thing you want is for your detector to pick up noise from the material it's built out of. The Scapa Flow steel provided that vital silence. Even some of the most sensitive medical imaging and radiation therapy machines used in hospitals once relied on it. And if you really want to get weird, and I'm always going to get weird, There's even been demand for ancient Roman lead salvaged from sunken galleons. Roman lead is so pure, it's been used in modern dark matter experiments. But while Roman lead is cool, Scapa Flow remained one of the most famous sources for this ultra-quiet steel. The ships that once represented war and destruction ended up helping us study galaxies, unlock the mysteries of the atom, and maybe even save lives. Today, low background steel isn't in quite as high demand. Technology eventually caught up, and modern sensors are better at filtering out background radiation. There are also far more regulations and ethical concerns now. Many of the wrecks at Scapa Flow and others around the world are considered war graves. Over 1,700 German sailors were aboard those ships when they were scuttled, and some of them didn't make it out alive. As awareness of the site's historical significance has grown, so has the debate. Should scientific utility outweigh the need to preserve history? These days, the answer leans toward no. Several of the wrecks remain protected under heritage laws. Some are popular dive sites, others have become artificial reefs, home to marine life. They're not just dead warships anymore, they're part of the ecosystem and part of our collective memory. Still, the legacy is unmistakable. A fleet meant to dominate the oceans was scuttled in an act of protest, only to find a new purpose decades later, helping humanity peer into the unknown. They didn't achieve their goal through cannons or engines, but through their profound and necessary silence. That's the thing about history, it doesn't always go the way it's supposed to. Sometimes the most fascinating legacies come from the stories left at the bottom of a cold Scottish bay. That's it for today's SideQuest. If you enjoyed the detour, subscribe, leave a review, and tell a friend who loves history's odd corners. This has been SideQuests, because history is what happens when the world is making other plans.